On this edition of The Fifth Estate, Donald Trump wants to go back to the White House.
This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together.
But he's mired in criminal and civil investigations. The latest, an unprecedented FBI search of his home, looking for top secret documents.
Why did he need it? What did he plan to do with it? Was he showing it off to friends? Was he trying to sell it?
The most powerful country in the world, its most closely guarded secrets at risk. But was Canada put at risk too?
It's just disbelief. Do we here in Canada have anything to be concerned about?
The compromise to our information is also a compromise for Canada.
We coordinate, that we share information. If those sources are compromised, they could lose their lives.
And we have the highest level of security documents sitting around, laying around the house. This is absolutely appalling.
In a worst case scenario, there's Canadian intelligence. That's a direct implication.
I'm Stephen D'Souza in West Palm Beach, Florida. Just across the water is Mar-a-Lago. The resort is also Donald Trump's home and the site of one of the most consequential FBI investigations in American history. The top secret documents found there contain some of America's most important intelligence and has many asking, could the former president face criminal charges? But Canadian intelligence sources are asking a very different question. Has our security been compromised? This is The Fifth Estate. It was a search that shocked the country and made headlines around the world.
Breaking tonight, Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home searched by the FBI.
La célèbre résidence de l'ancien président Donald Trump.
Sie kamen 9 Uhr morgens in Zivilkleidung, ein Dutzend FBI-Agenten.
This is something we've never seen before.
FBI agents seized dozens of boxes containing top secret information. The search was an extraordinary step that saw Donald Trump lash out.
I did nothing wrong. We were essentially attacked. We were broken into. They opened up safes. They brought safe crackers in. They brought many, many FBI agents in, all right before the midterms. This is a political attack on our country.
As we found out at this Trump rally in Miami a few weeks ago, supporters of the former president were ready to stand and defend Trump.
These Democrats will stop at nothing. I mean, it's a witch hunt or another. People see it for what it is.
They didn't do that to Hillary, Bush, Clinton, and none of the other bastards.
For some supporters, the FBI search was a call to arms.
Breaking news: an attempted breach at the Cincinnati FBI.
One supporter tried to attack an FBI office in Cincinnati. Like the violence on January 6th, that incident showed how Trump's rhetoric often has real-world consequences.
This election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over.
At that point, Trump's presidency was over, but another battle was about to begin. Here at the White House back in January 2021, Donald Trump was moving out. It was as hectic as moving often is, but it also raised alarm bells among a little-known group of archivists, setting the stage for a legal battle that no one could have predicted.
Mr. President, do you have any regrets about your presidency? Mr. President!
Earlier that day, Trump boarded Marine One from the south lawn of the White House for the last time. Aides were busy moving documents. On the White House grounds, in the week leading up to that day, pallets of boxes containing government records and other material were being loaded. All those boxes had one group asking anxiously, just where is all that material going? The National Archives is a record of American history through its documents. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Emancipation Proclamation, and millions more most Americans never see. Keeping track of it all, a dedicated and admittedly nerdy group of librarians.
It is a relatively small agency with a modest budget, but filled with extremely conscientious people who have one goal in mind, which is to preserve the history of the United States through its records.
Jason Barron was a lawyer with the National Archives and Records Administration. He's seen presidents come and go, but always made sure their records didn't go with them.
When noon strikes on January 20th and a new president is sworn into office, all of the records of a former president are immediately, by law, in the legal custody of the Archivist of the United States. Any removal of records from the archive's custody, immediate physical custody on January 20th, is a violation of law.
There's no gray area?
There is not.
That means much of what was in boxes like these were property of the archives, not Donald Trump. But archivists would learn that those boxes being loaded onto the helicopter and others were on their way somewhere else. What no one knew at the time was that the boxes leaving with Trump contained thousands of pages of documents, some of which had classified and top secret information. Or that the records were on their way here, to Mar-a-Lago, a presidential home like no other. Unlike past presidents who faded into the background, Trump was in the public eye, surrounded by people.
John King.
Mar-a-Lago was a destination for those who wanted to be in Trump's orbit during and after his presidency.
Make America great again.
He would host world leaders, mix with rich donors and stargazers, even crash weddings.
They're telling me about the border. They're telling me about China.
All the while, the material he took with him from the White House was just steps away.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's sitting in his golf bag. I just don't know. But this man had such complete disregard with these documents.
Bruce Heyman is a former U.S. ambassador to Canada. Nominated by Barack Obama, he served from 2014 to 2017.
This is in a resort property in Florida, in a place where people go have weddings and parties. And we have the highest level of security documents sitting around, laying around the house. I mean, this is absolutely appalling.
The club became Trump's full-time home after he left office, a refuge from the cold, taxes, and politics of New York. But even with the high walls shielding it from the outside, the fear from intelligence agencies was that it was a prime target for spies working for America's enemies. As a counterintelligence professional, how would you assess Mar-a-Lago as a place to keep documents?
A disaster.
Peter Strzok knows what it's like to investigate high-profile figures. He was the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. He led the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election and investigated Hillary Clinton's emails. He was fired from the FBI in 2018 after sending private text messages critical of Trump. He's suing the FBI for wrongful dismissal.
Every good intelligence agency, whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, you name it, all of those nations have as a collection priority the residencies of current and former presidents.
Those concerns were echoed by Canadian intelligence experts who also worried about Mar-a-Lago and Trump.
It's just an ongoing symptom of the disrespect that he had for intelligence collection and the professionals that dedicate their lives to it.
Communication security establishments, you kind of can see it in the distance there.
Arthur Wilczynski is no stranger to dealing with a country's most sensitive intelligence. He used to work for the Communications Security Establishment. He was an Associate Deputy Chief for Signals Intelligence and later a Director General for Intelligence Operations. CSE routinely shares the foreign communications it intercepts with the Americans.
We work together in terms of collection. We work together in terms of reporting. It's a very integrated partnership between countries that have common interests.
Those common interests extend beyond North America to an organization called the Five Eyes, pooling vital intelligence to protect Western democracies.
I had a big honking safe that took about 5 guys to get up to the second floor of my house. It was huge. It would have sunk the Titanic.
Until last year, Vincent Rigby was at the highest levels of Canadian intelligence. He was National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister. He sat down to give us rare and unique insight into what it takes to handle sensitive information.
You don't take home sensitive stuff, and you just don't throw stuff blindly into a bag. You've got to be very, very, very careful. The things that keep us up late in the other Five Eyes countries is if we have a leak, if some U.S. intelligence, for example, were to be leaked from Canada, we'd all be afraid that the faucet would be turned off.
While allies worried about their ability to protect secrets, they watched as a series of events showed just how vulnerable Mar-a-Lago could be. Last spring, a woman got in, posing as a wealthy heiress. She said she was a member of the Rothschild family. She even put the name on a fake Canadian passport. While her motives weren't clear, she did charm her way to the former president's side.
Ooh, look at that.
First, send me
Send you what?
picture.
The picture of you and Trump? I told you, $1 million.
Another case, though, was potentially more serious. In 2019, when Trump was still president, a Chinese national got in after pretending to be the daughter of a member. She was arrested and found to have 4 cell phones, a thumb drive with malicious software, even a device to detect hidden cameras. And those are the intruders we know about.
You tend to catch the people who screw up. When you look at a country like Russia or Cuba or China, when they want to do something well, they're extraordinarily good at it. They're not going to make the sort of clumsy errors that led us to see the folks that you were pointing out.
Even Trump himself potentially let secrets leak.
Hello, everybody.
In 2017, he was hosting the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The two discussed a North Korean missile launch that happened in between courses. They looked over possibly sensitive documents in full view of camera-toting guests.
So the intelligence community knew, his staff knew from an early point in time that he didn't really respect classified information in the way that past presidents had.
A lesson Canadian intelligence was also learning.
It can lead to people wondering, okay, what information do we need to for example, as Canadians, keep Canadian eyes only?
4 years later, the National Archives was learning that Trump had a very different idea of what was his and what belonged to the American people. What they didn't know at the time was that their search for records would lead to a criminal investigation of Donald Trump. When we come back.
If they are exposed, they could end up either being imprisoned or, in some cases, they are executed. It's a very dangerous business.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol.
With more than 20 investigations and lawsuits swirling around Donald Trump, from questions about January 6th to alleged attempts to change vote counts, a request from the National Archives to return government documents didn't make headlines at first. A small but determined group of archivists, more used to painstaking research and cataloging records, were about to take on the former president. And their actions would reverberate around the world, including in Canada.
They do not seek the limelight, and somehow they've been drawn into this realm of headlines about records.
A few months after Trump moves back to Florida, the National Archives contacts his team and tells Trump that they have 24 boxes of records that the archives needs back. They say they have to comply with the Presidential Records Act and that they understand it's very chaotic in a transition, but getting all records is absolutely necessary. At this point, no one knows Trump took the highest levels of top-secret information. The archives does know he has the letters from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
It was a very personal, very warm, very nice letter.
Tell me when you're ready.
They also want back the letter Barack Obama left Trump on his last day in office. At first, the National Archives can't understand why Trump's team just doesn't return the boxes they shipped to Mar-a-Lago.
Because the answers they get back are not simply, oh, fine, yeah, we'll send that to you, we'll figure it out. It becomes sort of an increasingly acrimonious discussion, an increasingly argumentative discussion.
It's obviously an incredible moment, right?
Washington Post reporter Devlin Barrett has covered national security for more than 20 years. He calls this the most intense and high-stakes case he's seen involving classified information.
As the months pass and as letters go back and forth, what happens is the conversation gets more contentious and more combative.
2 days after the archive sends a letter asking for the return of the documents from Mar-a-Lago, video shows Trump boarding a plane in Florida destined for his club in New Jersey. Aides are once again trailing behind him with moving boxes. The scene led to speculation. Was Trump moving some documents out of Mar-a-Lago so the archivists wouldn't find them? It would be almost a year before Trump's team finally agrees to return some documents. It's now January 2022. The archives is told to come to Mar-a-Lago. 15 boxes are there waiting for them.
And that's when things really get a little crazy, because as the archivists go through those boxes, they realize that sort of scattered throughout in not really any discernible system or pattern or purpose is a lot of classified information, more than 100 different classified documents.
In February 2022, the archivists make a fateful decision. Overwhelmed by the intelligence information before them, they ask the Justice Department to step in. The FBI also starts going through the material. They find top-secret documents so sensitive that you need special access to even read them.
This morning, former President Donald Trump is at the center of a new grand jury investigation. The Justice Department is now looking into the alleged mishandling of classified documents.
What's in the documents isn't publicly known, but the FBI and DOJ see enough to start a criminal investigation into Donald Trump and how the top-secret information was moved and stored. The grand jury issues a subpoena asking for any more documents the former president has with top-secret markings.
That's an important moment, because at that point, you're really not asking anymore. You're telling. A subpoena is telling someone to do something. And it's from a grand jury, so you know this is potentially a criminal matter.
In June, the Trump team relents, admitting they do have more documents. Once again, they invite investigators back to Mar-a-Lago.
Justice Department officials go look at the storage room where everyone's understanding is that these things had been kept. And in the storage room, according to court records, at one point the investigators want to look in some of the boxes they see, and they're told they can't.
Instead, a Trump lawyer hands them one sealed envelope with more documents. Trump's team insists that's all there is.
The legal team has done a very thorough search and turned over everything that we found that we had. So it's my understanding, on very good belief, based on a thorough investigation, that there was nothing there.
But the FBI has a strong suspicion there is more there. They have a source close to Trump, a valet who worked at the White House and moved with Trump to Florida. The valet tells the FBI that Trump himself told him to move boxes out of storage. The FBI has security video to back up his story.
What this former valet tells them is that, in fact, there may have been a deliberate effort to keep them from gathering everything that was there that was classified.
Sometimes we hear an argument made that in the chaos of moving out, he might not have been aware. Well, that just doesn't work.
Mary McCord is a former senior official in the Justice Department's National Security Division and a longtime prosecutor. She worked side by side with those who are now investigating Trump. She says the FBI did what it could before finally executing the search of Mar-a-Lago.
There were lots of efforts to obtain the information short of a search warrant, but when those did not satisfy the government that it had actually obtained everything that was there, it didn't really have another alternative.
Unprecedented.
This is unbelievable.
The FBI executing a search warrant
on former President Donald Trump's Florida home.
He was not in the state at the time.
A judge signed off on the search. The FBI believed there was probable cause to find violations of the Espionage Act, evidence of obstruction of justice, and evidence that documents were concealed. Under the watchful eye of heavily armed Secret Service agents, the FBI moved in. They searched the storage room, a safe, and Trump's office. Now memorialized in this photo, they found dozens of documents Trump's team insisted they didn't have. The FBI finds 31 documents marked confidential, 54 marked secret, 8 marked top secret, and perhaps most worrying of all, 48 folders marked as containing classified information were empty.
The significance just can't be understated at all. Just the cover sheets show me that we're at very, very high levels of sensitivity.
So sensitive that the CIA is called upon. Their job, figure out what could go wrong if the information gets out in the open.
You give the president the crown jewels, the best intelligence, the best material, and those were the documents that he took.
Douglas London was a case officer in the CIA. He spent more than 30 years at the agency, including running counterterrorism operations. Now a professor, in his former role at the CIA, he likely would have been helping assess the damage.
You might actually have to put some of these activities on ice. You might have to stand them down, at least until such point that you could do a counterintelligence review and a damage assessment to know, are these operations still good? Are our collection activities still reliable?
Intelligence agencies have to consider the worst case, that the people and technology they use to gather information have been compromised.
Certainly if the United States doing a damage assessment saw some risk to a partner, we would immediately contact the partner and give them a heads up so that they could take the proper precautions and protect their people, protect their capabilities.
Without a doubt, it's a body blow to the U.S. intelligence community, but it's a body blow to other intelligence communities, and Five Eyes in particular, because the U.S. shares a lot of that intelligence.
Having just retired last year, Vincent Rigby is in a good position to assess what could be happening behind the scenes in Ottawa.
I would not be surprised if some phone calls have not been put into the United States. What is the nature of the intelligence? Can you share with us what is in these documents?
Canada relies a lot on the U.S. for intelligence. We take in more than we provide.
But we still provide some pretty critical intelligence for our allies, including the United States. So perhaps putting a call or two into my counterpart to say, okay, can you just give us a little bit of insight here as to what are these documents, and should we be concerned from a Canadian perspective?
According to Donald Trump, there was no reason for anyone, Canadian or American, to be concerned. A month after the search, he returned to the scene with Fox News to profess his innocence.
Many of these boxes had other things, many newspapers, literally massive amounts of newspapers and pictures. But there were a lot of boxes for a lot of different things. We were having very nice discussions, no problem, and then all of a sudden we got hit very hard by the FBI.
When we come back, what was Trump planning to do with those documents?
Why did he need it? What did he plan to do with it? Was he showing it off to friends? Was he trying to sell it?
And have Western intelligence agencies lost the trust of their sources around the world?
They're going to look back at this entire presidency, and in particular this episode, and say, why should I entrust my life to you?
The FBI swept into Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's home, and left with information so secret, only a handful of people should have had access. The boxes, though, were scattered throughout the posh club, leaving intelligence experts in the U.S. and Canada to ask, why would Trump still have this material? And why didn't he give it back? Clues could be found in how Trump treated intelligence as president. Douglas London said Trump cared most about things that backed up his campaign messaging, or that he had a personal interest in.
He didn't want to hear things about Russia, particularly negative things about Russia. He did want to hear about Iran and what was going on in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
London oversaw a team that briefed the president. He says a big challenge was just getting his attention. He remembers being told about one briefing in particular when Trump was distracted by food.
It was a struggle, and it was his then Chief of Staff, General Kelly, who persuaded our briefers, just keep going, he'll hear it.
But meanwhile, he's ordering milkshakes.
Yes, he was, and talking about the particulars of the milkshakes and how they're particularly fine in his facility.
In an intelligence briefing?
Yeah.
Trump wasn't distracted when it came to Russia. It was often the center of his strained relationship with the intelligence community. In the fallout of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election, he put the division on display for the world to see.
They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be. I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
The relationship we had with Trump obviously was wedged in stone, I think, when he stood beside Russian leader Putin. That was not a good sign of things to come.
Trump was also notoriously loose with information. In the early days of his presidency, Trump shared top-secret information about the Islamic State with Russia. In 2019, he tweeted out a highly detailed, classified photo of an explosion in Iran.
We had a photo, and I released it, which I have the absolute right to do, and we'll see what happens.
Presidents do have the right to declassify records while in office. For the CIA, it meant they had to be extra careful with what they told the president.
We were gearing first to get his attention, but then also to make sure that were there reports or issues or details he wanted to preserve or keep, we would try not to let him have that.
Investigators were still trying to figure out how much information did Donald Trump take after he left office? How long had he been collecting it, and why? Trump had hundreds of pages of classified intelligence in a basement, in a home office, at what was essentially a resort. Former FBI agent Peter Strzok.
At the end of the day, the more the saga sort of plays out, that remains the central question. Why did he need it? What did he plan to do with it? Was he showing it off to friends? Was he trying to sell it?
There was one file showing he kept briefing notes on the president of France. The contents of that folder have not been released. Reports suggest he also took nuclear secrets. The Washington Post reported there were files on Iran and China.
Obviously, he had a lot of thoughts about China, he had a lot of thoughts about Iran, and he had a lot of thoughts about the president of France. So some of this stuff tracks if you think about what he was most interested in.
Over at the CIA, analysts became concerned that as president, Trump seemed to want intelligence that advanced his political agenda.
So you jump to, okay, where are the president's focus tend to be internationally, whether it's the Middle East and Saudi Arabia's relationship there, or Russia. As an intel officer, I don't generally believe in coincidence. There are rarely coincidences. Usually there's a real valid reason for things.
A month after the FBI search, as the gravity of the investigation becomes more apparent to the public, Trump offers a number of explanations, including accusing the FBI of planting the documents.
Did they drop anything into those piles? Or did they do it later? There's no chain of custody here with them.
He also returned to that familiar defense from his presidency that he can declassify what he wants. So it doesn't matter why he took them.
There doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. You know, there's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
Well, I think it's made up. Was it planted or did you declassify it? These things are inconsistent.
But for intelligence agencies in the aftermath of the FBI search, the why was less their concern. It was what was in the documents that was likely causing sleepless nights in Washington and Ottawa.
Information sharing takes place daily between our countries. You know, the compromise to our information is also a compromise for Canada.
Is there anything that we need to be concerned about? In a worst case scenario, there's Canadian intelligence. That's a direct implication.
The Fifth Estate contacted CSIS and the Minister of Public Safety for comment. We were instead sent a statement from the Privy Council, which reports directly to the Prime Minister's office. Should the Government of Canada be made aware of any security breaches, appropriate protocols and procedures are in place to deal with them. The PCO declined to say if Canadian intelligence agencies have already been briefed about the documents found during the Mar-a-Lago search. At this stage, it would be inappropriate for the Government of Canada to comment on an ongoing U.S. law enforcement investigation.
Knowing the Prime Minister, he may well have reached out and asked questions and had some pointed questions, if not directly from him, from his staff in the Prime Minister's office. Do we need to be concerned? Are there any issues here? What's at stake?
What's at stake could be intelligence on a national security threat that's top of mind in Ottawa right now.
We know the Chinese Communist Party is involved and interested in promoting their own national interests.
Parliament has heard a lot about the threat posed by China's Communist Party, including possible interference in Canadian elections.
They are an actor in foreign interference. We are concerned about the activities regarding threats against the security of Canada, including foreign interference by the Chinese Communist Party.
By law, CSIS cannot reveal details of how it is monitoring those foreign threats. We do know that Canada relies heavily on the United States for foreign intelligence gathering, which means that if Trump really did keep top-secret documents on China lying around Mar-a-Lago, that information, and possibly its sources, could already be compromised.
You need to have as much information about a particular situation in order to manage its risk. If some of that information that is central to making decisions is no longer available because sources are compromised, then you do not have all the information that you should have in order to make an informed decision.
I think long term, we're going to have a very, very great relationship.
Trump welcomed Chinese President Xi Jinping to Florida in 2017 for a series of meetings and photo ops. Away from the cameras, former FBI agent Peter Strzok says China likely put a lot of work into keeping a presence around Trump and the property.
I find it hard to believe that certainly when you think about China, when you think about Russia, that they would not have extended extraordinary efforts, which continue to this day, to get access to Trump. And whether that is people close to him, whether that is his electronics, his email, his text, whether that is the places that he frequents, that he lives.
Any number of countries that could have potentially been mentioned. All I think is, wow, this is continuing to demonstrate that we have a very serious issue with Donald Trump stealing these documents.
It can put, I think, not just the U.S. at heightened risk, but Five Eyes allies, NATO allies, Canada's included. Information is power, and if they know what we know and they can then respond, it is not a good situation for anybody.
Especially for those operating in the shadows, where the front line is deep inside the territory of America's most dangerous adversaries. The spies who put their jobs, families, and lives on the line to collect the information that ends up on a president's desk.
Agents, it's not like the books and the movies. For the most part, those doing work with the greatest danger, such as agents who would be reporting on the likes of Russia and China and Iran, are generally doing it for ideological reasons. And those are the people that will pay the dearest consequences if they're compromised.
Experts say the intelligence Trump had in his briefings likely didn't have specifics on sources, but it wouldn't be hard for someone to figure out where the information came from.
We've seen tales across many of these countries of people who've been beaten and tortured and killed for being political dissidents. Imagine what someone who actually leaked information that would compromise their leadership would do. It's rather brutal.
They're collecting information on behalf of the Canadian government or other governments and passing that information back, often under extremely, extremely dangerous circumstances. And if they are exposed, they could end up either being in prison for a long time, or in some cases, extreme cases, they are executed. So it's a very dangerous business, a very dangerous business.
But the fear isn't just about people in the field now. A major concern for Canada and the U.S., recruiting future sources.
They're going to look back at this entire presidency, and in particular this episode, and say, why should I entrust my life to you? Because you can't protect the information that you've gotten in the past. The information that you've gotten from a source in Beijing, in Tehran, in Moscow. You can't protect that person and may well have caused them to come under investigation, to be imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Why should I trust you now?
When we come back, Catch-22. The bigger the secrets, the better the chance Donald Trump has of avoiding charges.
The more sensitive the information, the less likely you can actually bring a prosecution for the mishandling of that information.
And what could happen if Donald Trump is indicted?
There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of suspicion, and there is a concern that people might act out.
We have the raid of a former president's home in America. So heck, we deserve answers now.
This is not just an attack on Donald Trump. This is an attack on every single American.
If this can happen to a former president of the United States, I mean, what could this look like for the American people?
To the echo chamber of Trump-friendly media, the former president is being unfairly persecuted.
They are coming after me because I am fighting for you, and we will win because we know how to win.
When Trump is challenged, his followers, like those at this rally in Miami in early November, feel they're under attack too.
I believe Donald Trump is a righteous president. He's a noble guy that he only wants the best for the country. He's very focused on God, family, and this country.
Nice to see you.
At the rally, we run into longtime Trump ally and self-described dirty trickster Roger Stone.
I think that the deep state is desperate to find some reason to disqualify the president from running again.
America's comeback starts right now.
For Trump, the investigation is just another bump on a road back to a job he still falsely claims he never lost.
The raid of Mar-a-Lago, think of it. And I say, why didn't you raid Bush's place? Why didn't you raid Clinton?
Announcing his 2024 campaign at the same property where the FBI found those secret documents, Trump set his sights on those investigating him.
The gravest threats to our civilization are not from abroad, but from within. None is greater than the weaponization of the justice system, the FBI, and the DOJ. We must conduct a top-to-bottom overhaul to clean out the festering rot and corruption of Washington, D.C.
Trump, though, isn't riding a wave of support into this campaign.
Look at this map. That's nothing like a red wave.
I think it's safe to say we're not going to have a wave. What I can tell you is the biggest loser tonight is Donald Trump.
This is an absolute disaster for the Republican Party.
Many of Trump's favored candidates in the recent midterm elections lost, damaging Trump's influence with the party, leaving him weakened. But as former U.S. Ambassador to Canada Bruce Heyman says, Trump shouldn't be taken lightly.
This man is a threat to the way we exist, because what we have in our democracy is a rules-based system, and he has complete disregard for all of them. Donald Trump, if he is to survive and somehow get reelected, that is the greatest threat to the Canada-U.S. relationship as we've ever known it, and that we're going to see the extreme of himself.
A special counsel has just been appointed, but legal experts say there's a chance he avoids the most serious charges.
Even though everyone thinks of this as a case about classified information, it is very much an investigation about classified information. That might not be the criminal charge that gets brought if criminal charges get brought.
It is an irony big enough to fill the grand ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. The more secret the information, the less likely it'll ever see the light of open court.
Our intelligence agencies will say, there's no way you're using that in court. We need to continue to protect that.
To use the secrets as evidence means revealing them to the world.
The more sensitive the information, the more highly top secret, secured compartmented information, the less likely you can actually bring a prosecution for the mishandling of that information.
Ultimately, we may never really know what's in these documents, will we?
Well, I hope you don't, especially the highly classified information.
The special counsel now investigating Trump operates independently of the Justice Department. But lawmakers know any potential charges come with political risk.
I've never seen this country going the way it's going. We got to stand up for this country. This is the last. When this country falls, the rest of the world falls.
I don't know what we have to do, but I would follow the crowd that is willing to fight for righteousness, for a true president.
When you talk to officials, one of the remarkable things about those conversations is I think they understand the stakes and how whatever decision gets made could make for a turbulent period in American politics.
If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information, there'll be riots in the streets.
There's an old adage in Canada-U.S. relations that when the United States coughs, Canada gets a cold. If things go really badly south of the border, it could have an impact on this country. So we need to keep a close eye on it.
This all started with a simple request to return documents from a group of archivists whose job is to preserve history. Now they find themselves at the center of a potentially history-making battle with a former president.
I'm very proud of my former colleagues for standing up to the former president and his representatives. And we should all be thankful for the staff at the National Archives for being so bold here in living up to the traditions of the archives profession.
Taking on a former president who says he won't go without a fight.
We will not break. We will not yield. This country will never back down.
I'm Gillian Finley. Next week on The Fifth Estate. Unprecedented protests, brutal crackdowns. In Iran, they're calling it the next revolution. Led by young women, inspired by this woman.
We, the people of Iran, we are brave enough to bring democracy for ourselves.
The first time that the Iranian regime felt really scared of me was the moment that I got bombarded by videos and photos of women walking unveiled.
But now the regime is targeting her and Canadian dissidents too.
The regime actually were trying to kidnap me on U.S. soil, and I didn't know that. I learned it from the FBI.
That's Masih Alinejad in a rare feature interview. Next week on The Fifth Estate. For more about our investigation, sign up for The Fifth Estate's weekly newsletter. We'll keep you posted on stories we've brought you and share some behind-the-scenes details. Head to our website, cbc.ca/fifth, and subscribe there.